Okay, what else has been going on this week? Yeah, so I thought we'd better start here. A couple of months ago, maybe earlier, here at Type 40 Live, I brought you a story from information that I had received claiming that season 3 of all new Doctor Who had been commissioned from Bad Wolf by BBC Studios explicitly. So I never said anything about Disney or Disney Plus, which I know is like what everybody wants to hear about. But yes, so that was information that I'd received from a source which I've found to be thoroughly reliable over the last couple of years. And how it works with such things, for those who don't know, who aren't so familiar, is that as content creators, one brings an audience information. It's simple enough. Information as received, or as close to how it's received as possible, before we present it to you. And then it's up to you, the individual, to weigh all that up, the likelihood of said information being reliable or not. It's a pretty simple transaction, really. And a lot of it is sort of rumour and speculation, because at the end of the day, for better or for worse, what I always say about the stuff that we say that ends up being correct or incorrect, and we don't really get things incorrect very often on this show, is that it's always offered as rumour and speculation until it can be confirmed. Because it's fine for us to have faith in the people that speak to us, but we don't expect you guys to. You know, it is what it is. So yeah, I do get sent quite a lot of information. And as the show's continued, that sort of escalated, really. I don't just say literally anything and everything that I'm told here on this show. So how I view it, Simon, is that I weigh it up. You know, I respect confidences and I give people my word. Yes, including you, if you're watching. I'm not going to say anything. So I give people my word about these things. But, for example, during the last series, I had 2 people contact Type 40 to guarantee us that David Tennant would be reappearing as the 14th Doctor in the 2-part finale of that latest season. That didn't happen. You know, they were saying, "Oh, he's been seen on set." You know, I just didn't really ring true for me, so I didn't. I just didn't bring it through. They were new contacts who I didn't have any faith in, really. So I just ignored it politely. But in this instance, I did feel confident about what I've been told. And I have to say that even at the end of this week, I have no doubt that I was told what I was told in good faith. The same good faith that I had when I repeated it to anybody that was watching and listening to Type 40 Live over the last however long. Like I say, it's been 2 or 3 months. That being said, things do change, don't they? Things do change, and I was as startled to read what was released this week as anybody else. I mean, things do change all the time, don't they, Simon? In any workplace, TV is no different.
Gosh, no. TV in many cases is worse than other workplaces. It literally changes by the day. And things that you by the minute, you know, things that you think you're doing, and no, suddenly it's all completely changed, and suddenly no, you're now going to run off and you're going to start filming in Scotland or the Bahamas or whatever it might be. No, television changes literally. It turns on a pin, does television.
So decisions that people seem sure of literally one day, never mind 1 week. I think I'm going to say by the week, not by the day.
Literally they can change by the day. So as I say, something that you think is absolutely cast iron on a Monday, by Tuesday, no, it's all gone. It's all completely different. Yeah, exactly like that.
So yeah, where I'm going to start, I suppose, with this one is with SFX magazine. Now, this is a long-running magazine, a British science fiction magazine. It started in '95, something like that, and I think it's probably still the premier sci-fi genre magazine, maybe in the world now. I can't, since Starlog went, I don't think there's anything that can really challenge that. But over the last 6 months or so, they've had, in fact, it's longer, I think much of the last year, they've had a series of exclusive articles, location reports, and interviews with various people associated with Doctor Who. And in the latest issue, which is published today, is the final instalment of a long multi-part interview that they've had with Russell T Davies, the current and past showrunner of Doctor Who. And he's updated us and them fairly explicitly on the status of Doctor Who as it is right now, after the already shot second season. Of course, there's no official announcement forthcoming. I think that's been accepted. Lots of us are only really interested in the officials because I think that depends on who you are. Lots of people enjoy the speculation, Jack, but it's just always nice to have some idea, ideally for as long as we can into the future, about what we're getting and when we're getting it. As fans, that's only reasonable, isn't it? Because we're so invested in this.
Yeah, definitely. And like, as you both said as well, things do change. But, I was thinking on this earlier, I think as well with Doctor Who's past, and like even going back to the first Russell T Davies era, I think Series 3 was confirmed to be commissioned. Like I think it was even before Series 2 aired. So kind of like
2 and 3 were commissioned in one block.
Yeah, so like a similar sort of time frame, but it doesn't give me a lot of faith. It really doesn't. And the constant like change of oh yeah, I'm sure it's going to be commissioned. We have every little bit of faith, and then it's just like, oh, this is how the industry works. The sort.
You've spotted that as well. The incongruence.
Yeah.
Of what we haven't been told much, but what we have been told, what has been said, doesn't really line up at all. There's a definite air of tension surrounding the series and its future, Charlotte, that I don't think I've seen in a really long time, probably since the 80s. Even when Jodie Whittaker's era was failing so spectacularly, and you were never sure when it was going to be back on screen, and Chris Chibnall said next to nothing, which drove everybody mad at the time. I think now actually have a showrunner who'd shut the gob for a few weeks was actually quite a good thing. But it does feel really strange at the moment, and quite strained as well. Because at the end of the day, I think all of us are very aware that this year's relaunch was huge, and it undoubtedly, roundly, unarguably underperformed in every conceivable way.
Yeah, and I think I've been thinking about this as well, like, because I've had this feeling, like, I can't describe it better than that. I've had this feeling that something's not right with Doctor Who, and I'm talking more when it comes to the production side of it and Russell's team and the writing and the actors. Because if you look at not just one interview, because in the odd interview, actors and writers can say one thing and then they won't say it again. So you have to look for patterns. You have to look for what's the sort of things that are coming up a lot and what certain tone is being used again and again. And from Shooty, because you've had multiple interviews where your main man, your leading actor, has said, I don't know if I'm in Series 3, or I don't know what I'm doing after Series 2. Basically, words to that effect.
It's as if he's walking back his involvement, or at the very least, his investment in the show.
Yeah, and he's done that not just in one interview. He's done it a couple of times, and he did it quite recently at Comic-Con, which was the last big sort of press thing he did in relation to this show. So you've got your main lead actor saying that. We know we've had Millie exit after her first series, even though they're trying to dress it up like that never happened. But we know. Because
since we last spoke on that matter, I've had more information come to me about Millie Gibson. Russell has tried to convince us that all is well and all has always been well there, but I've had yet more people come forward with yet more stories. Millie Gibson her contract, as it previously originally existed, it was terminated. Allegedly, it was the arrangement was changed.
Russell's trying to make it out like, it was always the plan that that what's happened. Then why did she have an exit basically at the end of the first series?
But she is coming back, isn't she? This is what I don't understand.
Yeah, but she's coming back. But it's like, why would you give her an ending of her story? A cut off almost in that first series. If it was,
he hasn't bothered with any other endings, has he?
Yeah. And so you've got that with your actors, and then you've got Russell in multiple interviews also basically saying, we've filmed 2 series, we filmed those blocks. I can't tell you anything else. I can't tell you about Series 3. I haven't written all of Series 3. Comments to that effect.
He's now written 6. Well, no, that's not strictly speaking true because we don't know. We know that 6 scripts are in hand in various stages of development, and Russell himself has written 4, and that's for season 3. Everybody's obviously got intense feelings about this. Domgo in the live chat says, "Isn't this obvious that it's finishing at the end of season 2?" No, Domgo, it isn't. Come on, let's be sensible. Of course, it's not obvious that it's finishing at the end of season 2.
I think what if you want to use what's obvious, and I think we've all said this.
I don't think anything's obvious about the actual show itself, but the change
I
that you were saying.
What you can say is obvious that all the confidence, all the boasting, all the swagger, all that they had at the beginning before series 2, before series 1,
all the pomposity
that has disappeared. You've now got a Russell that before was saying, "Oh, it takes a powerful executive to say no to me," who was telling fans to F off, who was telling fans tough. Suddenly it's the industry and I don't know and we'll have to wait till this time. That's a very different person when it comes to tone to me. And that's what really I've been picking up on the last couple of weeks.
Russell remains publicly hopeful. But you can tell his heart's not quite in it. Simon, you talk all the time about Russell T Davies. He opens his mouth and rubbish comes out. Whether he's saying things that we agree with or not, things that we would like to be true or would not, at this point, should we listen to a single word this man says with the best will in the world?
In all honesty, I don't think we should really pay much attention to anything at all from any of the team until there is actually an official announcement. This, we're going into production on season 3, and it will be screened, whenever it is, the spring of 2026, whatever. I think that clearly it is in a state of flux behind the scenes at the moment. It's very, very difficult to gauge what on earth is going on there. And everybody is going to be trying to speak diplomatically and say the right things and not say too much that might look like a commitment. And so they must be in a difficult position at the moment. It's fairly obvious that season 3, I think it seems to be fairly obvious that season 3 is not a given at this stage. They're clearly optimistic and that it will happen, but I don't feel it's a given at this stage. I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't happen, or if it's delayed. I really wouldn't.
There are lots of whispers in the air and other information that's come to me, which I'll have to save for another day. But yeah, the uncertainty in the air, the uneasiness of the people involved in the show, who I say are usually pretty ballsy, pretty confident. They may be still saying the right things, but the tone is so different. I mean, the SFX have been great at covering Doctor Who over the last year since the 60th anniversary with an enormous amount of enthusiasm, and have had genuine exclusives there over a prolonged period of time. And that's great because obviously it's a big magazine. It's a British magazine. Doctor Who is a British show, probably the British show, certainly of its kind. It's right that it has that kind of relationship with it. And Russell has given this long series of interviews to them over the last few months. And in this edition, he says regarding the state of season 3, he says explicitly, it's an industry decision. It's like any business. These things take time. I think, doesn't know. I think, this is a man who's always so sure of everything. I think the decision will come after the transmission of season 2. That's what we're expecting. That's what we've always been heading towards. So he's given that interview there in this month's issue of SFX. I'm already spotting, just as you were saying, Jack, there's massive inconsistencies here with so many things that this particular gentleman has said before.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll be honest, I've got a bit of a bold prediction on what could be happening. So I believe that obviously, we've just had season 1. We're getting season 2 next year. They're currently filming the new spin-off, The War Between the Land and the Sea or whatever it is. I think they're going to use that to fill the void in 2026. And then I think 2027, we're not going to get season 3. I think we're going to get the special, like similar to what Tennant and Jodie got. And then that's going to be Shooty's farewell. And then I'll be honest, I don't know what form the show will take after. But what
you're pointing to is a treading of the water that we had in the latter days of the Chibnall era, whereby, again, this is still yet to be officially said, so I have to say this, where Chris Chibnall was allegedly fired. Jodie Whittaker's contract was not renewed. The entire production was closed down. They filmed as much as they could in a short period of time to make it look like they were wrapping it up naturally, and they got it all done, all locked down, all in the can, and then dropped out that material over a nearly 2-year period to make it look like it was seamlessly running from one production into another, whereas Doctor Who was effectively out of production for 18 months, coming up to 2 years. Yeah. And you think they could be looking to do that again?
Yeah, that's how I feel. And, I've generally enjoyed Shooty's performance, and I know, there's people that like and dislike and whatever. That's completely fine. But Shooty is quite popular in terms of like acting roles as well. And to be honest, I think he'll probably get snatched up for something else, whether it be like a Hollywood thing or whatever, or another big TV show.
Because they tell us he's in demand, don't they? And he's got all these Instagram followers. And to be fair, Barbie was a big film. He had a part in, sort of.
Come, weren't they? They were supposed to come onto the show, weren't they? All his followers. But the one thing that gets me, like, I trust you, Dan, in the fact that you thought that you said it had been. Renewed.
Yeah, I still believe that was told me in good faith.
It was commissioned. There's a lot of history with science fiction shows that were renewed for a second season or even a 6th season or whatever, and they were cancelled just before they were about to wrap on the final season of the last season of what they were going to do. Yeah. So things like
you're absolutely right. In international television, that the more I think about that, isn't unusual. It's just in British television, it tends not to happen. You see, Matt, if they say they're making something. But I interrupt. Give us some examples.
No, you're right. No. Well, things like Farscape, that was renewed for a season 5, and it was actually cancelled. And it's just not like back in time either. I mean, it's recent stuff as well. Like
Netflix cancelled something as well recently.
Yeah, a League of Their Own.
That female wrestling series. Yeah.
There was a lot of things where they were just they were renewed. They're actually they were ready to go, and then they've just pulled it within the first thing, and they've probably given them an extra last episode to finish it all off.
And this is
the money that they were going to spend, Sorry, Simon.
And this is why, whilst the intelligence on season 3 being commissioned might have been correct, as I remember saying at the time, it doesn't mean season 3 will definitely go ahead.
You did tell me that at the time.
Commissioned until it's actually, to be honest, even when it's sort of signed on the dotted line, they could still cancel it, and it would mean that they would have to buy people out of contracts, etc. But television industry contracts always come within the contract. There is a term and condition in there that says we reserve the right to not make this production or to not screen it. So even when you've signed on the dotted line, you're not guaranteed that the production is actually going to go ahead. As I say, it has an implication that you've got to buy people out of contracts, etc. But they can do that. They did that with season 23, the original season 23. That was commissioned, and it was happening, and people were contracted, and they had to buy them out of contracts. Sorry, Matt.
I don't know. No, you're right, Simon. You'd know anyway with the question I'm going to ask. So, I don't know about modern, because BBC's all changed and everything. But I remember there's a famous story with the sci-fi show Red Dwarf, where they had commissioned two seasons of a particular show, and that show had only been made for one season. There was only going to be one season, so they had some money left over for a second season that there was never going to happen. So that was siphoned into Red Dwarf to make Red Dwarf. Otherwise, that show wouldn't have happened.
Okay. Yes.
So I wonder if that would happen now. you know, this is the BBC. I mean, I don't know if, you know, they would.
It isn't as simple as that, simply because it's not the BBC that is making Doctor Who anymore. It's a consortium, as we know, so it's more complicated. But as I say, the fact remains that just even when they've commissioned a season 3, it doesn't, until they actually go into production on it. It's not a given.
What are they going to do with all the sets and stuff? Because they're already sitting there collecting dust now.
Yeah, they absolutely. They will store them for a while, but again, there will come a point when it's no longer. The
TARDIS set is huge. It takes up an entire. Yes, they can't dismantle that.
Well, once they dismantle
even in the short term,
it's very much a commitment that they're packing in. Once they dismantle that. Sorry, Charlotte, you were going to say.
Well, I was going to say, and here's the thing that like I said, I've been trying to look for patterns when it comes to this, because I think that's the best way to make sense of it a bit. Think about it. They did season 1 and season 2 back to back. They filmed that back to back. There was no stopping. There was no waiting to see how it went. There was no, we have to wait till this aired. Then Russell, how come you could get 2 seasons back to back filmed with no stopping? But suddenly now, after your material has actually had to have ratings attached to it, and it's actually has had to face fan reaction, now you have to wait. To me, that tells me somebody above you has actually stepped in, who didn't step in before, who basically trusted you, who, when you walked into that room to BBC or however it happened, you it's very clear to me now, you sold them a great story. You were the showman again. You were the Russell of old who could like spin words brilliantly and get people excited. Yeah. And they trusted you because of your track record. And you had Bad Wolf, who up till Doctor Who had 2 really big hit shows with Discovery of Witches and Dark Material. So you had everything going for you. And now you are backing away. That says to me, consequences have finally hit you in the face.
Every boss has got a boss, haven't they? Or at least most bosses, apart from Alan Sugar maybe, and maybe the Trumpster. Everybody else, every other boss has got a boss, and he does look and sound a little different. We've got a comment here from David Jenkins who says, whatever they are saying, at the end of the day, enough people have to watch and to be positive. Without that, the series cannot continue. All the reports are either non-committal or negative. And Domgo reminds us that if you look at Disney successes, seasons are announced well in advance, not waiting and waiting. Mandalorian is a good example. Again, you're right, Domgo, you're right. I will caution, though, again, Disney doesn't commission Doctor Who. BBC Studios commissions Doctor Who. Disney is one of several people that pays for it, that pays in. So it's relevant, but it's not just because that's how Disney does stuff when it's their own show on their own platform. This isn't the same. We can't blanketly apply every culture war norm to this.
I mean, but the only thing we have also got to bear in mind is we simply don't know the minutiae of that contract. So it could well be that Disney maybe have a clause in there that allows them to maybe put the brakes on. I don't know. It's possible that they may not necessarily be, as you say, Dan, in a position to commission season 3, but maybe they're in a position to say, hold on a second, we want to review season 3 before you go into production.
And I'm not stupid about this, Simon. I know they don't need Disney to carry on being involved to continue making that show. But I'm not stupid. Ideally, they're going to want them to remain on board if there's a chance of retaining them. Of course, they're going to want to still keep their interest if they can. So why rock a boat now that potentially about a problem that need not arise for a good length of time yet, when you've already got 9 episodes in the can and a spin-off film? You've got enough material that you can tread a little bit of water. And that's really where that chimes with what you were saying, Jack. I do get the impression that stars and people who are presently visibly attached to the show are kind of walking back their commitment and involvement, and the people who are there for the duration, who can't go anywhere else, the people who make the damn thing, they are treading every kind of water.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, like, I mean, with my prediction earlier, where like I felt like Shooty Swan Song would be during like a set of specials, and like similar to what you said, Dan, it's kind of a repeat of the end of the last era. Who knows what could happen next? Could Russell write for another Doctor? Would he be allowed to write for another Doctor? Everything,
that's the thing.
So
I'm torn between two things. It's like, I don't want them to end Doctor Who on Shooty Gatwa. I don't want it to end. No. But then I don't want it to continue with Russell T Davies behind the helm.
No, I don't either.
But again, it all depends on the contracts. Again, without knowing what has been signed up for, it's really difficult to sort of foreguess any of this. The one thing that still strikes me is that whatever anybody thinks of a current version of Doctor Who, and there are lots of people that like it, lots of people that don't like it, whatever you think of it, doesn't really matter. It is down, despite what we're often told it is, to viewing figures. And let's all be honest here. If the viewing figures were astronomically good for season 1, would they already have confirmed season 3? I'm not reading any. Season 3 would be happening if the viewing figures were, absolutely fantastic, and the world had fallen in love with the show in the way that they did with the Christopher Stunt, and then particularly the David Tennant years. We'd already know that season 3 was happening, and there wouldn't be any doubt. I'm confident of that.
That's why I find it's going to be interesting with this Christmas special, because that's the next thing that's going to go out to the general public. And for me, that's going to be the first sort of sign of the impact of Series 1. Like, how much has it either retained the audience it had, or, and I think this is more likely, if I'm being perfectly honest, how much has he pushed away because of that finale, because of how this sort of ending note people got left on when it came to the plots, or the fact that he gave up on trying to sort most of the plots out. And like, that's the last impression people got. And I just think it's going to, and also if you think about how sometimes people see the Christmas one, they see it as like the throwaway one, the one that you can sort of miss a bit. So it's like, is that going to be the sign? And I just think they're going to be watching that. I think they're going to watch Series 2 figures very, very closely. And the spin-off as well, but I think it's more going to be the main series figures, if I'm being honest.
I think you're right.
And I think they're gonna just wait to see what happened, like Russell's talked about.
But that's exactly what Russell's saying. That's what he's saying. They're going to wait.
There's
but
very few.
Sorry, Matt.
No, you go. You go.
No, you go for it.
Oh well, I was going to say there's very few examples of shows that have gone from a season 1 to a season 2 with larger viewers, unless they've had really good word of mouth during that season 1 and people have been able to catch up on season 1. Well, things like Buffy and that sort of thing, the ratings are sort of middling. They never ever run out of the gate straight away. I mean, Doctor Who had a build up, didn't it? But it was a big at the beginning anyway, but it built up, and then season 2 just went rocketing, But I can't see this because of the word of mouth was being so bad about this series. This thing was on news outlets around the world about all the stuff that was going on in a kids show, and I don't see it getting this bump that a lot of shows do get, from word of mouth. I just don't see it.
I think because, Matt, it feels, despite the injection of money and despite the supposedly contemporary exciting actor that everybody was waiting to sign up, who was on the brink of a massive career, it feels completely irrelevant to anything and everything that's going on in the world. It doesn't feel like 20 years ago. To be honest, it doesn't feel like 10 years ago. It doesn't feel like it did when Peter Capaldi was playing the part. Greg Smith in the live chat watching on YouTube, hello Greg, says, I think a major problem with New Who is the people running the show grew up as fans of the show, and what we're getting now is nothing more than bad fan fiction. not sure I'd agree lock and stock with that, but I think some of the decision making is not being made clear-headedly. I think that's being made from a fan mindset, and with this sort of sense of woolly idealism rather than cold, hard sort of business heads. Simon,
I think there was a degree of complacency and over self-confidence that the old team were coming back. And as Charlotte has said, that because of the incredible success that they brought to it, and that cannot be denied. Doctor Who went stellar under that old team, and so the fact that we were getting that old team back, it is a bit of a no-brainer. How could it not be as successful as it was before? So maybe there was a degree, as I say, of complacency, of overconfidence on their part. To an extent, can you even blame them? That in a way, it's sort of fair to expect going in on the second time that they knew what they were doing because they'd done it so well first time, and so maybe the hunger wasn't there that was there when they were first doing it in 2005, 6, 7, and 8, so on and so forth. Because they were still working hard to do it there. Maybe they thought they could do this almost in their sleep.
Also, Simon, there was no real point in them coming back unless they were going to upscale it in not just one way, but in multiple ways. Otherwise, there wouldn't be really anything much in it for them, I think. And Neville here in the live chat says, why would they want Disney? It seems to me Disney hasn't brought a lot to the table. They've brought the thing that Bad Wolf was shopping for. They wanted a global streaming platform. They approached several of them, and Disney was the one that secured it, or they secured them, that came to it. So it doesn't matter that it doesn't seem to be a lot. They had what BBC Studios and Bad Wolf, what they collectively wanted. That's the only important factor, I feel. Charlotte, you were going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, just to do what Simon was saying, and I think it's taken us all a while to come to terms in different ways that Russell's a changed man.
Yeah. I
don't think we all really knew that, honestly, until we saw his interviews in the run-up to this. I think some people had a hint, Matt, I'm not denying that, but I don't think we knew how fundamentally he's changed. And I think that's sort of been a bit of a shock.
The stuff that he was saying was completely and utterly, rather than talking up the show, he was putting it down, really. Especially the classic era and everything. Whereas, for a proposed fan, it was pretty shocking, really.
But it's also, for me, it's you can see it in nearly every facet of him. And the way I've been trying to explain it to myself, to try and put more words than just, Russell's changed, because we've said that quite a bit, and I feel like we need to sort of explain it a bit better now, is I feel like in 2005, when Russell was writing those scripts, he still had that childlike wonder for this show, whether that's for what the Doctor can do, whether what the worlds this show can give us, what stories we can tell. The fact that the Doctor in 2005 represented this idea of this stranger's going to come into your life and bring you worlds you've never seen, adventures you've never experienced, sort of beings and creatures you thought could never exist, and they're real because of what the Doctor can do and what the TARDIS can do. And that was throughout all of Russell's first run. And I think I sort of realised this after watching Rose recently. That idea of the extraordinary, the adventure, the magic, the wonder. And you look at Russell writing now, and that child, that wonder, that excitement, he's become a boring adult now writing. And that's what I think has really made one of the reasons. I know there's plenty of others, but that the wonder was the beating heart he had in 2005. That has now died, I feel like, in so much of his writing. And that's the thing that I think he desperately needs to, or somebody, if Russell can't gain that back, somebody else who has got that same spirit needs to come into this show and be the writer for it, and not Russell.
Needs an adult.
I think it needs somebody who's hungry. I think it needs somebody who's aware of where the culture is right now, or where it could be, more to the point, where the culture will be in 2 years' time. The fact that wokeness is dying, people are turning away from DEI strategies as regards putting television together and movies, any kind of entertainment, as people pivot back to wanting things to make a profit again. And that doesn't mean not casting a queer guy to play a lead role. That's not what it's all about at all. It's about priorities, because these things are affecting every show and TV show every show and movie, that I can think of, the populist ones. That's why the ones that don't stick to those, stay on those rails, not only do they tend to stand out, but most of them go on to great success. A couple of weeks ago, they premiered the Alien Romulus movie. The Alien movies have been in existence for 45 years. They make one that isn't woke, and it's the second most successful Alien movie ever made, because it's like an oasis in a desert for audiences who are just crying out for escapism. I want to go back to Russell's original quote here. This is from SFX this week. So it's an industry decision. Yes, of course it is, and it's like any business. We've been through that. I still find the word think anachronistic when we talk about Russell T Davies. This is a man that's always so sure, but he only thinks. And this claim that this is what they've always been expecting and heading towards, this is what I believe is absolute and total bullshit. We've got this quote here from Christmas 2022. So this was before the start of filming on season 1, but after Millie Gibson had been cast, and with the whole of the deal in place as well, Jack, at this point. And he said it takes a while to get the Empire in shape, but that's a serious plan. In his defence, he does say only a plan. But he says, but obviously the deal was in place when he said this. Annual Doctor Who.
How long ago was this, Dan? Sorry, how long ago?
Christmas 2022.
Okay, because he's looking a lot thinner there too, if you know.
Annual Doctor Who. No gap years. It looks like they're going back on that. Both of those things, lots of content, on and on. So the intention was this: annual Doctor Who, no gap years. Let's go. Well, not what he's claiming now, that they were always cited on. This is what we always expected. Absolute crap. It's not what they expected at all. Something's changed.
And the other thing to think about is if what we're now saying is that we're going to wait until after season 2 to decide whether season 3 gets commissioned, that means that there almost certainly there's a good chance that there would be a gap year, because if they don't even greenlight season 3 until the end of season 2, you can't suddenly crank up the whole machine and get some content out that quickly. And in the meantime, as we've already said, they've got a huge set sitting there that's costing an enormous amount of money to just sit there, and we're just going to leave it there for however many months, literally gathering dust, doing with the lights off, doing nothing while they wait for season 2, which at this rate, we're hearing rumours that season 2 might not be broadcast until this time next year.
Exactly. This is something that's only just started to happen as well, Simon. They're only now starting to get vague on when season 2 is going to be screened. We talked about this just last month. The indication was from Jane Tranter, wasn't it? She was speaking at the Edinburgh TV Festival, and she said in a year or so, which was, that's not Easter. That's not 7 or 8 months. That would, I think we said at the time, that sort of points to it being slightly longer than a year, and that it has been pushed along, which could actually play into where Jack's instincts are with it all. What is cooking? We can't believe everything that Russell says, even if he says it publicly, because as time goes on with this, he's constantly changing his position. Mm-hmm. And
I never believed him anyway, because every episode, the next one was going to always be the greatest one ever.
Yeah.
And you've got to think the amount of cost. They've not paid for just one season already. They've paid for 2, so that's all the filming, that's all the sets, that's all the costumes, that's all your actors. They paid for a spin-off. That's a hefty chunk of money up front. If you're thinking business sense here, up front they have paid probably more than they would have. Well, it had to be more than if they were just doing it series by series, or if they got told you're definitely going to film 3 series and this is the amount of money we're going to give you. So and the more, like Simon's saying, a set stand still, it's not just that it's standing still, it's losing money for them. It's costing them. And in especially in TV, and Simon can probably talk more about this, you go quick. You don't stand and lose money. You don't sit and lose money and money and money and money. You go for the next profit. You go for the next thing that's going to get money flowing back into your production.
As often when you look back historically, Charlotte, at periods in TV history and shows that have been like massively successful, that we now look back now and think, oh, that show was a classic. And you look back and you think, oh, it must have made a long impact over a long period of time. But a lot of these shows were mega successful. Even the most successful of formats, were like the $6 Million Man or something like that, were on for like 4 years. Like Starsky and Hutch, 4 seasons, massively popular show for 4 years, 4.5 years, and then it was gone onto something else. So they made as much of it as they could in a shorter period of time as they could, and they buggered off before people got tired of it. That's probably a lesson that they could all learn now. Simon Ashley asks, if Disney pull out of Doctor Who, do you think the BBC, combined with Bad Wolf, will find a way to move forward with Doctor Who? Jack?
Yes, I do. But I don't think it'll ever be made entirely with just the BBC again.
They can't do it now.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of candidates out there, isn't there? There's Netflix, Amazon Prime, Paramount, so many different streamers. There's always a streaming platform popping out here and there. There are plenty of candidates, yes, but I just always have that, kind of fear, to be honest, of, what could happen with another partnership, because, I know we've had like a full season and stuff, but we still don't know the full logistics of, what's going on behind the scenes. And, I mean, in terms of industry talk, the BBC and Russell might get a bad rep for stuff that's gone on with this season, because, us as the public and fans, we don't know the full story. We can get good hints, yes, but I mean, we've
no idea where the blame lies. We don't know where the blame lies, do we, Jack? Because we could. I mean, I think a lot of the problems the show had creatively this year could be leveled at Disney's door. They compromised a lot, but it's very evident that Russell isn't. Never mind him. Oh, he's not the man that he was. That's clearly true. But but he's not. He's not dialed in to the culture as much as he once was. He kind of seems a little bit asleep at the wheel, as if it's all going to be fine because he's so fabulous.
I think he's getting tired, to be honest. I think you can just see it from, and I'm not talking about mentally. I'm talking about physically as well. You can see that there's a decline there, is what I'm saying, and I think it's taking its toll, and I think the stress of everything and that is if something's not done soon, I think there's going to be a few worrying things happening. I really do. Because look, I mean, the fact of the matter is he's making some really, really awful decisions. Getting rid of Millie Gibson was, for me, one of the major things, because she was the best thing of that show.
I agree.
For me, anyway. And
she was dependable.
Well, not only that, but she was a good actor, which was rare. She was actually believable.
Yeah, you believe that she was the person that she was telling you she was. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was she made it for a good companion. And I just feel that his writing is off. There's something going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of. Whether or not it's because of he's taken on more political beliefs. And therefore a warrior for them than worrying about a show that, he purports to love. It's obviously the cracks are showing and they're just getting bigger.
And he's making everyone angrier.
I don't think he cares about that. I think he's just like, he's just because in his little bubble. And
that's what I've noticed that's what I've noticed most about this week. Is we've got this sort of inversion of how things usually are. There are factions within this fandom, and that's putting it mildly. But I think as regards Russell T Davies, I'd say it's pretty much an even split. There are people who don't believe a single word he says and find him as a person objectionable. And they are therefore sort of all in on this and really invested in it and the go woke, go broke kind of thing. But there are also a group of people, as many people, who would usually back him to the hilt with practically everything. But they are also outwardly blaming him and being angry with him for not giving any of us the answers that they want either.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. I mean, I always used to be a big fan of Russell's writing. Got excited when he was announced he was coming back. I mainly loved the 60th anniversary specials. I was fairly a fan of the first half of season one. Obviously, yeah, they had the flaws and stuff, but I really enjoyed it. But then it came to the latter half, and then obviously the finale. It kind of felt like we were watching something that was just rushed, and it felt like to me that there was just a lot of it that was cut, just like a lot of things. It felt like I was looking at a jigsaw that didn't have all the pieces put together.
His reasoning for getting people in to write for the show as well, just didn't. It just seemed really weird to me. Wouldn't you want to get the best people for the job rather than just like doing it for an apology? I'll give you this job because I feel really bad about what I said or did, or it to me. Your priority is the show and to make the best possible show you can. So I just I just don't get it.
I mean, there's only so much, in all fairness, there is only so much transparency that we can reasonably expect from anybody in that job. It's their job, it's their career, it's their future.
Yeah.
But I've never seen him this uneasy or adversarial, come to think of it. All is clearly not well. And whether we enjoyed the last season or not, or how many parts of it or not, we are all united in wanting to know if that third season's happening. It's the very sort of bare bones. Is Doctor Who continuing? As we were saying earlier on, Jack, right at the start of this discussion, is Doctor Who going to continue?
Yeah.
And are any third parties, what are their intentions as a sort of secondary thing?
Yeah.
I mean, so when he talks to SFX and gives a statement like this, it has set the cat amongst the pigeons, because people have obviously been reading all of it. They've been reading every SFX that he's spoken in, looking at everything else that he's seeing elsewhere, looking at other interviews from other people involved at the Edinburgh TV Festival, all that kind of thing, and sort of seeing if it all joins up, and it really isn't. I mean, I've noticed in the coverage of this that there's not much being reported about the timeline of the events that led up to this in the latest issue of SFX there, because in a previous part of the same interview, Russell had said that filming, he'd actually said this, I've got this here, filming for the third series is set to happen 2 to 3 months before the second season is going to air in 2025. He only said this 3 months ago. Filming for the third series is set to happen 2 to 3 months before the second series is assumed to air in 2025. So, at that time, this is before they started talking about moving season 2 to the autumn, because I've checked. So, bear in mind, this is assuming that the season was due to start in, say, late April, early May 2025 at the latest. It was still there. That's still stated, which meant that the 3 months before that point, 2 to 3 months, would mean that they had every intention of beginning filming, not production, actual filming, it says there, by February 2025 at the latest.
And do we know when he said that? I know you said 3 months.
That was my question.
Since it was published, or is it 3 months since he said that? Do we know?
The interview, it was published 3 months ago. The interview, I think, was given
we wouldn't know when the actual interview was made.
No, it was earlier this year, according to the.
But the point I'm making is, was it pre-season 1 airing?
Yeah. Was season 1?
Right. Okay.
Yes, because these were the interviews. These were the interviews, the portions of the interview that were promoting season 1. So yes, so what he was saying was, that they were expecting, because season 2 was due to air from May 2025-ish, that they were expecting to start filming in February 2025. And yet in this, that's of season 3. Yet here he's saying, "Oh, this is what we've always been heading towards." Well, not according to Russell T Davies, because he said this.
So that to me is the key. The fact that that those comments about starting filming on season 3 were made before season 1 didn't do very well in the ratings. It is, it's just brutal and as simple as that.
Something has changed, and obviously, people have got those magazines and have been keeping track of this, and so the editor of SFX has waded in on this, because it turns out that this quote, this extra portion here that we've been looking at for the last 30 minutes, this wasn't actually given to SFX at the same time as the rest of the interview. So we've got, I've had this from Darren Scott, SFX editor, and he says, just to clarify, this quote is actually new and added to the interview from when we spoke at San Diego Comic-Con, which was in
talk about hang people out to dry.
So Comic-Con was late July. So what can we take from this? The bulk of the interview was several months earlier, and then they speak to him again, and you get this. So this was certainly after, for example, that I was told that it had been recommissioned by the BBC. We don't know whether this was before or after that Deadline article, if you remember, that started to sow all those seeds of doubt, or the D23 upfront corporate event that Disney held, if you remember, where there was lots of gossip coming out about that. But it probably did, because Russell looked, when we said at the time how uneasy Russell looked at Comic-Con, Charlotte.
Well, yeah, and also what I was saying about Shooty's comments. He was saying at Comic-Con, I've been trying to think the exact wording, and I might still be slightly off, but I'm sure his wording was, I don't know about my future beyond season 2. So you think about Shooty saying that, Russell now saying this, and just the general sort of, the fact that they didn't really announce, and I remember I said this at our coverage, I said, I'm sorry, at Comic-Con, they've announced nothing new. Not another spin-off. That's a surprise, which we didn't know about. They didn't announce anything about season 3. So it was all stuff that was basically, it'd been leaked about this spin-off. We knew that was coming. And they hardly spoke about season 2 even. I noticed that. So the sort of lacking of details now, which I sort of thought at the time was a bit odd, and how this is your first Comic-Con. This is your first big panel back.
Yeah.
And you've got nothing forward-facing and to announce. Now it really makes me think, I think they couldn't announce anything forward-facing beyond the stuff that was banked, which was the spin-off, and the season 2, which they filmed. Because how can they talk about anything that probably they haven't got the money or the permission to do yet?
What this is telling me is a couple of things, because I still trust the source of the information that I received. And two things can indeed both be true, Simon. First of all, it seems clear to me that something has gone very, very wrong. Something somewhere along this line has broken down and compromised whatever. Maybe terminally, I don't know. So therefore, something has actually changed and deviated quite drastically from the intended schedule, as we've heard talked about before, based on one criteria or another. Something has actually properly changed.
And I would say that it is fairly clear as a result, despite what people say these days, that ratings don't matter. They obviously do matter, because we obviously are judging it by the ratings. The industry is judging.
The 28-day figures would have come out around the same time as well, Simon.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the thing is, what we've got to remember is, as I've said many times, that the BBC, Disney, the same, Sony, Bad Wolf, they're all commercial enterprises. They've all got to make the sums add up on the bottom line at the end of the day. And so they have to look at this pragmatically and say, okay, well, the viewing figures are not what we would have expected. Well, they would have had a projection in their mind as to what sort of viewing figures they would expect, because any corporate company has projected sort of sales targets, as it were. Mm-hmm. And the sales target of a television show is the ratings. And so they'll have had an idea what they were expecting. And I would imagine they were expecting 7 to 8 million per episode per week. And so as a result, I would say they've sort of had to look at it and take a pragmatic decision and say, look, it's not hitting its targets that we'd anticipated. And so we have no choice. We have to reel it in and rethink it. But of course, the difficulty is, for something like a television show like this, it's very, very public. And so to reel it in is an awkward and a difficult and an embarrassing thing to do, to reel it in and still save face in saying, no, it's all great and it's all still a huge success, but we're just sort of rethinking it. Yeah, how do you do it without it being obvious that it's struggling?
Would they make those sort of decisions during the actual, like, while the show is airing, or would they wait until the final ratings all come in for the entire first season?
Generally, they would get a pretty good idea as soon as those initial ratings come in, because the algorithm will automatically tell you roughly, okay, if these are the sort of the ratings on day 1, these are roughly what you're going to get on day 7, and these are roughly what you're going to get on day 28. So this is why those overnights still are important. And so, yeah, when those initial ratings came in, I'm not really in any doubt they will have been disappointing. And so I think words will, discussion being had behind the scenes, certainly by halfway through the season, when the season really wasn't taking off in the way that we might have expected it to. Yeah, I think that difficult conversations would have been being had behind the scenes. Yeah, exactly that.
So, yeah, according to this, nothing further will be disclosed on the show's future. Nothing at all until the middle of next year, 2025, maybe even towards the end, Charlotte. It's going to drive people nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, because we're going to get a void again. And it's crazy that this new production, which we thought, right, it's somebody, it's Russell, it's not Chibnall, it's not Whittaker, it's not that production team. And that within a year, they have got it back to a state that the BBC or who's the bosses here are having to have conversations. This should have not happened, to put it bluntly. Even this should have been the show.
To be back here again, almost immediately.
Yes. To be this quickly back when you had Tennant as your lead-in as well. You had the most popular actor come back as your lead-in. You had Bad Wolf, which was probably one of the biggest UK production teams we had in this country, independently going. And that we're straight back here. And I just find it... And that's the thing that I find the most upsetting, that there's no excitement. And there's other shows that I've seen actual physical, like, proper engagement and excitement. And it's just not here for Doctor Who, which is just sad.
And I think part of it, Charlotte, could simply be that the exactly the same as happened in the mid-'80s. The public have just fallen out of love with Doctor Who, and to an extent, it might not have mattered who you put in the role, how good the stories were. We just have to face up to the fact that the public just could have fallen out of love with it, and the fans watching simply isn't enough. And it's what I've thought for a long time. The show just needs a rest, and I don't mean that sort of critically in any way other than,
I know you don't.
Things do need a rest every so often and come back bigger and better than they were before. And I think the show just needed a rest at the end of the Whittaker, at the end of the Whittaker years. I think it just would have been the best thing in the world if it had just rested for a while. And so when it came back, people were ready and hungry for it.
So a lot of people here in the live chat are very despondent or even in pain. I think a lot of people do find this painful, and it's terrible. It really is. I don't like seeing this at all. Dom goes asking, where are the AI figures? And it's a perfectly reasonable question. Nobody knows. It's been months and nobody's seen a single one yet. BinTube just has got a frowning emoji. So we're going to try and cheer you up a little bit, BinTube. Thank you for all of these comments. I'm out of here, says Rebecca Gold. That's Ian David Deers there. There's no more pictures of Shooty Gatwa, please. Good luck, everyone, he says. Doctor Who is bigger than Russell T Davies too, says Lee Smith. Of course it is. Doctor Who is ours, not his. All of ours. You, me, them, everyone who's ever followed it. At least, say we may argue amongst ourselves, but we all want the best for it. And Rose Kirby said, I just don't know if I've got the patience to wait for the Christmas special. See, but that's how we're so invested in it, aren't we? So yeah, let us know what you think of all of it. Really, it does seem that it's going to be a long time before we hear anything. We could keep chewing through this over and over again until our heart's content and make the same show every week. And we're not going to do that here at Type 40 Live. But when these conversations do need to be had, we will absolutely step into them and listen to everything that you've got to say. Take the mood that Russell T Davies seems intent not to do, and see which direction you're pointing as the dedicated fandom, and try and get some instincts about what the audience, the general public, make about all this as well. Because as much as Doctor Who sort of belongs to us, it can't and won't remain on screen unless they get the general public back. And as yet, that just hasn't even come close to happening, has it?